get to a certain age, his daughters don't stay there because they stay in London, you get to age when you downgrade. And it's not a big deal, it's not hopeless, it's actually gives you a fresh feeling. And I think it's very silly that he won't do it, but he's determined not to, and the King is determined to, and it seems that if he doesn't listen and make all these decorations properly, that he's going to stop giving him the money, which would be very difficult indeed for him.
Because every 5 years, isn't he meant to paint the outside and all sorts of things?
And the Queen didn't give him much money in her will. It all goes to the heir. So Charles has got the money, and so you just wonder how he'll manage, because he's only got, what he can do.
How he'll manage? He can move somewhere cheaper like the rest of us. I mean, £400,000 a month.
Yeah.
You could go to Frogmore Cottage, which is the offer.
Yes, exactly. That's the offer. And it's all been very decorated. Apparently, Meghan did it very nicely. It's much smaller, but it's also very carefully guarded. So he should be able to do that.
The People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 1 o'clock on Tuesday, the 11th of June. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Emily Carver.
You'll be better off under a Tory government, a message from Rishi Sunak as he unveils the Conservative manifesto. He's promised to cut taxes, boost defence spending and clamp down on immigration. But do these promises add up? And crucially, will his pledges persuade voters to back the Tories in the general election? Reaction and analysis to come.
Meanwhile, Labour has promised 100,000 extra child dental appointments, along with supervised teeth brushing lessons for school children.
The Lib Dems have also focused on health, promising to create greater access to GPs in rural areas.
And elsewhere, there's been another ugly scene for Reform UK's Nigel Farage, who had building rubble thrown at him during a campaign event in Yorkshire. Politician safety again at risk. We'll bring you the details.
Now, did you manage to stay awake through Rishi Sunak's announcement of the manifesto? And if you did you have any favourite moments? Get in touch, gbnews.com/your say.
Yes, Tom did ask for another coffee during that manifesto launch. He took a lot of questions, which is good, I guess.
I would have appreciated a joke or two.
A joke or two would be nice, yes.
I get that it's a serious moment for the country and serious men for serious times, but my goodness me, I mean, just a little bit of levity. I think the only joke we got was that the GB in Great British Energy from the Labour Party is supposed to stand for giant bills. That's the one that sticks in my mind.
I think the problem is there's no strong story to tell. No strong story to tell, to put across to the nation. But let us know your views. I'm sure you've got many different thoughts. gbnews.com/your say is the way to get in touch. We're going to get reaction from our panel in just one moment after the headlines.
Tom, Emily, thanks very much and good afternoon to you. It's exactly 2 minutes past 1 and we'll start with a roundup from the Conservatives' manifesto launch, where Rishi Sunak has promised a multi-billion-pound package of tax cuts in an effort to get his general election campaign back on track. It includes another 2p cut to national insurance and to eventually scrap it altogether for the self-employed. In total, the package of cuts would amount to an annual cost of more than £17 billion by 2030. Well, Sir Keir Starmer's called it a Jeremy Corbyn-style manifesto, which he says is unaffordable. Launching the manifesto earlier, the Prime Minister promised what he called a bold plan.
We will keep cutting taxes in the coming years, meaning that by 2027 we will have halved national insurance to 6%. That is a tax cut, my friends, worth £1,300 to the average worker.
The Conservatives' manifesto also includes help for first-time home buyers with changes to stamp duty and what's been called a new and improved Help to Buy scheme. There was also a pledge to address a shortage of housing by building 1.6 million new homes across the country. There's also £8.3 billion to fix potholes and resurface roads. along with a total ban on smartphones in schools and on immigration. There's a promise to get flights off the ground to Rwanda every month. Rishi Sunak says the deterrent would be a key part of Britain's migration plan, clearing the asylum backlog, he says, within 6 months, ending the use of hotels.
That is why if you vote Conservative on July the 4th, the flights removing illegal migrants will depart in July, establishing the deterrent that will stop the boats. Because when people know that if they try to come here illegally, they won't get to stay, then they will stop coming. And if we are forced to choose between our security and the jurisdiction of a foreign court, including the ECHR, we will always choose our nation's security.
But the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, says the Conservatives' plan doesn't make economic sense and that he wouldn't match that national insurance cut.
Money's not there for the Tories' desperation, and what they're producing is a recipe for 5 more years of chaos. And I think that's why it's so important that we see this election as a choice, because we can't go on like this. We need to turn the page, rebuild, start with Labour. We've got 6 first steps that are ready to go on July the 5th, get on with the job, roll our sleeves up. So that's the choice before the country now.
Sir Keir Starmer there speaking earlier. Well, away from the election campaign trail, police today have arrested a 28-year-old man on suspicion of public order offences after objects were thrown at Nigel Farage during a campaign event late this morning. It's understood a coffee cup and possibly some building rubble narrowly missed the Reform UK leader, who was on top of the party's battle bus in Barnsley town centre. Mr Farage was addressing supporters at the time when he was interrupted by a crowd of demonstrators. He has since said that he was warned by police not to get off that bus. Gary Glitter has been ordered to pay more than £500,000 in damages to one of the women he abused. The woman, who can't be named, is suing the disgraced pop star, whose real name is Paul Gadd, following his conviction in 2015 for abusing her and 2 other young people between 1975 and 1980. He was briefly released in February last year before being sent back to prison after reportedly attempting to access images of children on the dark web. International news, and the Hamas terror group has now accepted a ceasefire proposal that was passed by the United Nations last night. The UN Security Council backed the 3-phase plan, which includes the release of hostages and the withdrawal of Israeli forces. A senior member of Hamas says the group will accept the deal and that it's now ready to begin negotiations over the details. And finally, they say that elephants never forget, but now researchers have found that they've actually got a particular skill for remembering names as well. New studies suggest the giant animals use individual rumbles to get each other's attention, similar to the way that humans use names. Evidence shows them recognising and reacting to certain calls addressed to them and even ignoring calls addressed to others. Experts used a specialist signal processing technique to identify the subtle differences in each call, just like Tom and Emily use. For the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Well, welcome back. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has set out plans for a 2p national insurance cut in a multi-billion-pound gamble as he attempts to get the Tory general election campaign back on track.
He launched the Conservative manifesto at the Silverstone Motor Racing Circuit, where he positioned himself as the heir to Margaret Thatcher or perhaps Nigel Lawson, with tax-cutting promises as he seeks to overturn Labour's stubborn 20-point poll lead.
So, the reaction in the room. Let's speak with GB News political editor Christopher Hope, who was there front and centre. Christopher Hope, we heard your question to the Prime Minister about the ECHR. Were you surprised by his response?
Well, hi Tom and hi Emily. Yeah, welcome to Silverstone, the home of F1. He never really got off the starting blocks or past the grid at the beginning of a race, I think, on the answer to that ECHR question. He repeated the line we've heard before, that the government won't be bullied by a foreign court and will overrule a foreign court if required. But that's not really, I think, what some on the right want to hear about, to take on the Reform UK party, which is hoovering up support on the right because of this inability, I think, to grip and be firm about ECHR withdrawal, which so many on the right one. So that was a difficult question for him to answer. He didn't like it and gave quite a weak answer. I mean, the Tories are here are pushing some highlights from this manifesto. They're saying that national insurance for the self-employed will be removed entirely by 2029. That's a £1,300 a year tax cut for the self-employed by then. That's almost an appeal to white van man, to entrepreneurs, to people who trade on their own. You've also heard there for other measures about no new green levies. The measures we knew about to cut national insurance for those in employment by April 2027 down to 6% from, don't forget, 12% as late as last December. So there are measures here to cut taxes. The problem the party has got is no one is listening, and they've got no benefit at all in the polls from cutting national insurance twice by 4%, by a third, over the past 8 months.
Chris, what did you get a sense of the atmosphere in the room? Watching it from our vantage point, it seemed that the Prime Minister perhaps could have been a bit more high energy. Had he had a bit of his mojo extracted over the weekend after the gaffe, the slip-up after D-Day?
He's had a hard time, hasn't he? Of course, he was interviewed on Panorama on BBC One in prime time by Nick Robinson last night. He's got a lot on, I think. Yeah, it felt a bit flat to me, a bit half-empty towards the back of the hall where the journalists were positioned, shouting questions over the heads of the activists. It's not clear whether they wanted more people here or not. There was a lot of space at the back for more chairs. They weren't taken. But then again, it may have been hard to get people here because of security issues and ensuring a big crowd, on a wet Tuesday morning in Silverstone. It might be hard to get people away from work or the campaign trail. But the Tories are certainly trying to make the case for their tax cuts. They want us to challenge Labour on Thursday at their launch about what taxes they may have to increase to pay for their policy platform. But yeah, it did feel maybe a bit flat, but that could be just me.
And he said he wanted to halve immigration with a cap and then bring it down further. Do you think the right of the party will be impressed enough to not issue this alternative, rebellious manifesto, if those rumours are true?
Yeah, on those rumours, what I'm hearing about, not so much a manifesto, but there might be some movement on ECHR withdrawal. There might be some right-wing candidates who may write a letter to a newspaper or put a press release out saying that if they're elected, they will fight for ECHR withdrawal. That could be what happens next. But certainly on the issue of falling net migration, well, every government for the Tory part since 2010 has pledged to get it below maybe 100,000, get that number falling. It hasn't happened yet. The problem the PM has got is they're looking to be elected for a fifth time, having failed the previous 4 elections, to make it happen.
Well, Christopher Hope, thank you very much for joining us there live from Silverstone, the heart of where it was happening.
Yes, but we're joined now in the studio by the director of the Popular Conservatives group, Mark Littlewood, and the former Labour advisor, Stella Santakidou. Thank you very much indeed. Mark, 3 words to describe that manifesto launch.
Oh, blimey. Predictable, reasonable, unexciting.
Yeah, I think that's...
There we go. Right, well, should we turn to Stella? 3 words.
Sad, stale, futile.
Goodness me. OK, so shall we dive into the detail now, Mark? You say predictable.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's a bit like when you get budget speeches, isn't it? We knew most of what was going to be in this 80-page document because it's been trailed over the past few days, but you're supposed to have the rabbit in the hat. I suppose that's really the break for self-employed on national insurance.
The white van man tax plan, has it been dubbed?
I think that's a good move. So that is a tax cut. They haven't gone very far on tax cuts. We were expecting this further promise for a reduction in national insurance. So that's pretty much it. You've got, obviously, the protection of the pension. The state pension will not incur income tax. So, I mean, fair play. There's some tax reductions there. Quite a commitment on house building. Is it 1.6 million new homes in 5 years? That's actually one huge commitment.
That's now higher than the Labour target, which is 1.5 million.
Yeah, that is, I mean, that's serious stuff. I mean, whether they'll be there to implement it, I don't know. But the problem, which I think Chris Hope was alluding to somewhat, is if you make some really big promises now, and you say, actually, this is fundamental to the future of the country, the electorate might very well respond, well, why the hell haven't you done this in the past 14 years then?
No,
so what he's going to try and do is to say, look, I can be stable, don't risk things getting worse. I know we've had a hard time, but Starmer will make it worse.
Oh,
That's
it's all
basically his
cheery,
narrative.
isn't it? It's all suns and
not very
rainbows. Stella, you say it was all futile.
Yeah, I think that the Conservative Party is already acting like they are the third party, because they revealed a manifesto today that is full of completely unfunded promises that Rishi Sunak obviously cannot explain away, which is what you usually expect from the Liberal Democrats, from the Green Party. It's definitely what I expect
from the Labour
Party. I wouldn't say that. I mean, I'm sure Rachel Reeves, you would argue that the Labour Party manifesto is extremely strict on its fiscal rule. But everyone always says, oh, the Labour Party, we don't trust them on economy, blah, 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 blah. And then the Conservative Party, they're coming up with this manifesto now, and they have all of these fantastical tax cuts. And Rishi Sunak was asked by Kate McCann, Times Radio, from Times Radio, how exactly is the spending going to be increasing in public services, which is what Rishi Sunak said. How are people going to see the local authorities, the prison services, all of that improve, which we know they are crumbling. And he has no answer to that. His answer to this is that somehow he's going to tackle tax evasion.
Yes.
Which again, why has he not done that already?
Well, they say they can raise several billion a year because they're already doing it.
They're already doing it, but what is going to dramatically change? And then the other thing they're saying they're going to do is they're going to tackle the welfare bill. Which, again, how are they going to be doing this? The Conservatives have been tackling about...
It's certainly a big job, Stella. We'll come back to you in just a minute, but we've got Shadow Paymaster General Jonathan Ashworth on the line. Jonathan, thank you very much for joining us on the show. Rishi Sunak's right, isn't he, when he says the Labour Party haven't been transparent when it comes to tax?
No, he's not right. In fact, he's lying about Labour's position on tax, because Labour is pretty clear, crystal clear. No increase in income tax, no increase in VAT, no increase in national insurance. And every single proposal we put forward in our manifesto this week will explain how they are costed. In contrast, today we've seen a desperate wish list, the most expensive panic in history, of commitments that Rishi Sunak cannot fund, from savings he cannot find, because the money is not there to fund any of his commitments. And that means with Rishi Sunak, we'll have 5 more years of chaos, just like with Liz Truss, and people will end up paying more on their mortgage as a consequence.
Jonathan
That's the reality
Ashworth.
of today's Tory manifesto.
Do you describe the frozen tax thresholds of the last few years as Conservative tax rises?
Those are decisions that have been taken by the Conservative government, which means that working people are facing the highest tax burden since for 7 decades.
OK, let's pause there, Jonathan, because am I not right in saying that the Labour Party has committed to continue those frozen thresholds, dragging more people into higher rates of tax? If you're saying that process can be described as a tax cut when the Conservatives do it, a tax rise when the Conservatives do it, why is it not a tax rise when the Labour Party do it?
Look, we've been very clear on tax. We're not increasing the rates of income tax, national insurance and VAT.
No, you're simply dragging people into higher bands.
But we are going to put the stability of the public finances first. Rishi Sunak can torch all economic credibility. We know what that means. It means wrecking the public finances like under the Conservatives and Liz Truss. It means people paying more on their mortgage. Our instinct is we want to see the tax burden on working people come down, but we are not going to put forward any proposal that is not fully costed and fully funded. That
Jonathan Ashworth,
with Rishi Sunak today, who's put forward a programme when the money is not there.
Yeah, there are a few pledges that have come from the Labour team today about how you're going to teach children how to brush their teeth. You've also got free breakfast for every primary school child. Yep. How's all that going to be paid for?
Because we're prepared to make tough choices. We're prepared to close the non-domiciled tax loophole. and use the money from that to fully close it and use the money.
How many non-DOMs are there, Jonathan Ashworth? How many non-DOMs are there?
We think we will raise over £1 billion from that change. We're going to levy VAT on school fees. A tough decision, absolutely, but we are honest with the British public. We're not going to pretend to the British public that they can have this big, long wish list. Well, something they've not been able to deliver in 14 years, but let's leave that to one side. We're not going to pretend that you can have this wish list as long as your arm, and when there's no money there. We are going to make those tough choices because we're not going to take GB News viewers for fools. That's what Rishi Sunak is doing. The reality of Rishi Sunak is this long wish list, this long, expensive panic means that your viewers will end up paying more on their mortgage as a consequence.
You're talking of these policies as if they're sort of, I suppose, lacking in detail, and yet I've been looking through the Conservative manifesto today on the issue of housing. And on housing, they say specific areas where more housing is going to be built. There's going to be new quarters added to Leeds, Liverpool, York, along with the already announced plan for 250,000 extra homes in Cambridge. Now, added to intensification in London, that's 5 specific areas where effective new towns or intensification is going to take place. That's the Conservative proposal. The Labour Party has said it's going to build new towns, but you're not telling us where those towns will be. In fact, when we've asked your representatives time and time again, where are these new towns going to be, you say you'll start a commission. You won't decide until after the election. We don't get to know until after we've voted. That's taking the public for fools, isn't it?
Well, I've come straight from the BBC. I haven't read that particular chapter of the manifesto. I've been looking at the scorecard chapter and their fantasy spending, because the money is not there. So just help me. What does it say about planning reform in that chapter? I've not seen it.
It says it wants to abolish the EU. It says it wants to abolish the EU neutrality rules to unlock over 100,000 homes. And incidentally, they're going to build 100,000 more homes than the Labour Party, according to this manifesto.
But are they going to reform planning? Are they going to reform planning? Because this is quite important, because as you know, Tom, because you've reported on it a lot, the Tory MPs who get re-elected to this place always block planning. But if it's in their manifesto, they'd be under an obligation.
They certainly would be. And Jonathan Ashworth, what they say on this is, to my mind, remarkably similar to what the Labour Party is saying. You're saying new towns built with development corporations.
Are they talking about planning reform?
The Labour Party describes its planning reform as building new towns with development corporations, overriding those local rules. Now, the Conservatives have announced, in the same way they've done the new quarter in Cambridge, Leeds, Liverpool and York, using the same development corporation model. Now, that could be described as planning reform.
So the Tory MPs are going to vote for planning reform. Oh, the pig flying. No way, they're never going to do that. You know that as well as I do, Tom. The Tories were not prepared to take the tough decisions on planning. We are. We're going to build in this country. The fact that we do not build in this country was described by the Financial Times yesterday as a disgrace and an embarrassment. The FT was
well,
right.
Thank you so much for your time, Jonathan. We'll have to end it there, but thank you very much indeed, as always, Jonathan Ashworth, Shadow Paymaster General. Right, OK, well, we're joined back in the studio by the director of the Popular Conservatives Group, Mark Littlewood, and the former Labour advisor, Stella Santokidu. Mark, Jonathan, 20 points ahead in the polls. They don't have to be that secure on absolutely everything that's in their manifesto.
Well, I mean, the Labour Party are playing it incredibly safe. I mean, I do buy into this idea that they are trying to just transport a Ming vase over a polished floor. As long as they don't drop the Ming vase, you know, the opinion polls would suggest they're home and hosed. There are some good things in this manifesto. I'm just a bit surprised that Sunak didn't go a bit bolder. I mean, bold is written into the whole plan. There is some stuff here that I like, but Chris Hope picked up the ECHR thing. He hasn't moved the dial on that at all. He could even have said more explicitly that if the ECHR block the Rwanda flights taking off, that's it, we will issue our letter of withdrawal, right? So he might think that they won't, but if they do, we will do X. He was a bit wishy-washy than that. So I would have preferred him to be somewhat bolder. I don't buy the idea that the money isn't there. I mean, you can chop and change your spending commitments. The idea that we start with all the government spending commitments and work from there. I mean, you can start with your tax position and work backwards, the other way round. So I welcome the tax cuts. Wish it was a bit bolder, bit clearer. Wish we'd actually, if they were going to go all the way to Silverstone, seen a rather more imaginative backdrop than just the standard blue Conservative screen with the logo on it. I was thinking he was going to do a lap or two in a McLaren.
Yeah, during the
point.
referendum campaign, Boris Johnson took a lap in a very fast car. That was a seminal moment. But Stella, talking to Jonathan Ashworth there, it seemed like he sort of tacitly admitted the Labour Party will be raising taxes on ordinary working people. They're keeping those tax thresholds the same. If they're describing that process under the Conservatives as tax rises on ordinary working people, why is that process under the Labour Party not precisely the same?
It's not the same to say that the Labour Party is going to implement policy that is going to raise taxes, when what they're actually doing is they're just accepting a policy change that has already taken place. That's what they're saying.
Tax rises that are already baked in.
But yeah, exactly. I get what you're saying, and yeah, it's true. Like, could the Labour Party cut taxes further? I'm sure they want to. I'm sure they would if the finance of the government would allow that. But we know very well that there is a massive funding gap right now in the government, and everyone is asking how exactly is this going to be financed. So I find it completely irresponsible and very easy for Rishi Sunak to say that, don't you worry, we're not going to cut spending, we are just going to cut taxes, because how exactly are they going to do that?
But Stella, Keir Starmer calls himself a socialist, so therefore he probably likes tax. Why would he necessarily want to cut taxes? How do you know that for sure?
Well, because I know that he says that he doesn't want to raise taxes for working people, and I believe him when he says that.
OK.
That is a very socialist thing to do.
Well, there we go. Stella and Mark, stay with us. We're going to have more developments on the attack on Reform UK's Nigel Farage. Stay with us. You're watching Good Afternoon Britain. We're on GB News.
Britain's newsroom. Weekday mornings from 9:30.
I've got a grade 3 astrocytoma brain tumour. Once I was diagnosed, I tried to do my claim with my insurance company and was rejected. They then also cancelled my life insurance and also cancelled my wife's policies as well.
And this is Zurich Insurance, John.
This is Zurich,
and their point was, because you'd had some dizzy spells, which you hadn't told them about, they say dizzy spells equates to brain tumour, which there's no evidence to support that.
I was with King's College Hospital. They ignored them. King's College Hospital were the experts.
And you were expecting £25,000?
Yeah, that was a critical illness claim.
Critical illness, because you've got a critical illness. Clearly, it couldn't be more critical, could it?
No.
Michelle, you've got a lovely, poorly husband, and you're also worrying about paying the bills and what the future holds.
Yeah.
What impact is this having on you on a day-to-day basis?
I try not to think too much about the future because it does upset me. I'm kind of thinking, when John does go, I'm left with a mortgage to pay and 2 young children.
How old are your kids?
5 and 3.
Right.
Yeah. So it's incredibly tough.
And are you working?
I haven't worked since having the children.
Right.
And that's a decision we made when we had children.
In the grand scheme of things, this amount of money is a drop in the ocean for a company like Zurich.
Yeah, because I think they could make all this go away.
I've read some of the statement. Zurich said, "We're sorry to hear of the very difficult circumstances Mr. Renlin's family are experiencing." You're terminally ill, and they're calling that difficult circumstances.
The People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. GB News, Britain's election channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is the nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them. They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Some breaking news now. As animal rising activists have graffitied a king's new portrait as part of their campaign for the RSPCA to drop their Assured Farm scheme.
Yes, this is quite something. This is the portrait that was quite controversial, wasn't it? Everyone had a view on this very latest portrait of the monarch, and by the looks of it, these animal rising activists have taken it upon themselves to slap some kind of sign. It's Gromit from Wallace and Gromit, isn't it?
And I just find it just beyond belief that the security in this gallery can see people wander in with massive, sticky comedy stickers, and not just that, but big paint rollers too, and think, oh, nothing's going on here. These two people, it's very normal to walk into a portrait gallery with two massive paint rollers. I just find it very, very hard to understand quite how we arrived at this situation.
And why was there a camera set up there with a cameraman?
Oh, yeah, I can.
Seems a bit bizarre.
No, all very odd. Although I suppose we should say I believe the painting, it does have glass in front of it. I'm not as egregiously angry at this as I would be if they'd have gone in and sort of smashed it or,
I am, because we learned from,
painting.
Milkshake over Nigel Farage. That's now turned into construction site debris. You know, one thing comes after the other. If you let people off for this type of thing, then, you know, they feel emboldened somewhat.
It is
anyway.
done properly.
Yes, well, the Labour Party is pledging to add an extra 100,000 dental appointments for young people in an effort to clear backlogs across England.
Yes, so it would see extra slots open up during evenings and weekends, paid for by clamping down on tax rules.
Oh, that old chestnut. Well, joining us now is our political correspondent, Catherine Forster, who hopefully has some details. And, Catherine, you're on a moving bus. Let's hope that this signal holds up. But do tell us.
Yes, good afternoon from somewhere in North Yorkshire. I'm really not sure exactly where we are at the moment. But yes, I was with Sir Keir Starmer and the Shadow Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, this morning. They were visiting a school and talking about their child health action plan. So 100,000 new dental appointments for children specifically. They say that last year alone, over 500,000 fewer children were seen by a dentist than just back in 2018. Sir Keir Starmer was saying that the most common reason for a child to go to hospital is to have teeth removed. So there's been some criticism, hasn't there, about the sort of nanny state element of this. He was watching a class have this supervised toothbrushing that Labour have said that they will bring in for 3 to 5-year-olds if they get into power. They're also saying that they would ban very highly caffeinated energy drinks for under 16. That's not things like Coca-Cola. 50 milligrams of caffeine per litre or more, so sort of Red Bull, that type of things. But Sir Keir Starmer says he doesn't really care about allegations of the nanny state because a bad way, but also we were talking to him in view of the Conservative manifesto about their manifesto and their tax plans. He was asked about tax cuts and the Tories' promises of tax cuts. Let's have a look at what he had to say.
We have been absolutely clear that all our plans are fully costed, fully funded. We will not be increasing income tax, national insurance or VAT, so no tax increases for working people. None of our plans require tax rises. But this is coming from the party that's put tax to the highest level since, for 70 years. And they're building this sort of Jeremy Corbyn-style manifesto where anything you want can go in it. None of it is costed. It's a recipe for more of the same, and that's why this choice of turn our back on this, turn the page and rebuild with Labour is so important. We've got 6 first steps. We're ready to go on July the 5th.
Quite something that Jeremy Corbyn referenced, wasn't it? Because, of course, it's not so long since Sir Keir Starmer served in Jeremy Corbyn's cabinet and indeed campaigned for him to become Prime Minister twice. But now what Jeremy Corbyn pledged in 2019 is being held up as an example of very, very, unwise ideas. So what a change of fortunes.
Very interesting indeed, now using that as a bit of a derogatory describing word
I'm fairly
for
sure
their
I can
manifesto.
remember a certain leader of the Labour Party who campaigned pretty vigorously for Jeremy Corbyn.
Oh,
and went
no, I
round
can't remember that.
Toured the media studios saying this is a fully costed manifesto. Do you remember that meme?
I do, yeah.
All
Free
the Labour
Wi-Fi.
front bench. It was all fully costed, so we were told. Turns out it wasn't. But coming up, we're not only going to be on board the Labour battle bus, we're hearing from the Lib Dems as well. What on earth could Ed Davey be possibly up to? He's got to go one up from a theme park. So that coming up after your news headlines.
Very good afternoon. It's 1:33. The top stories from the newsroom this lunchtime. Rishi Sunak has promised a multi-billion-pound package of tax cuts in an effort to get his election campaign back on track. It includes another 2p cut to national insurance and to eventually scrap it altogether for the self-employed. In total, the package of cuts would amount to an annual cost of more than £17 billion by 2030. Sir Keir Starmer's called it a Jeremy Corbyn-style manifesto, which he says is unaffordable. Launching the manifesto earlier, the Prime Minister promised what he called a bold plan.
We will keep cutting taxes in the coming years, meaning that by 2027 we will have halved national insurance to 6%. That is a tax cut, my friends, worth £1,300 to the average worker.
But the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, says the Conservatives' plan doesn't make economic sense and said that he wouldn't match that national insurance cut.
Money's not there for the Tories' desperation, and what they're producing is a recipe for 5 more years of chaos. And I think that's why it's so important that we see this election as a choice, because we can't go on like this. We need to turn the page, rebuild, start with Labour. We've got 6 first steps that are ready to go on July the 5th, get on with the job, roll our sleeves up. So that's the choice before the country now.
Sir Keir Starmer there speaking earlier. Well, let's take a look at some of the other key pledges from the Conservative manifesto. It includes help for first-time home buyers with changes to stamp duty and what's being called a new and improved Help to Buy scheme. There was also a pledge to address a shortage of housing by building 1.6 million new homes, along with an £8.3 billion pledge to fix potholes.
Hi there, time for a look at the weather with the Met Office for GB News. Some bright spells today, but a lot of cloud is developing, and that cloud will give scattered showers in places, particularly towards the east. In the east, we've got low pressure. Towards the west, we've got high pressure. That's going to kill off many of the showers through the rest of the day, but always the chance that just about anywhere could see a shower or two, but the most frequent showers will be across eastern and central parts of England. And we'll also see this continued northerly breeze. That's going to make it feel on the cool side, particularly for the North Sea coast, just 12 degrees there for Sunderland. Towards the southwest, where we've got some sunshine coming through and lighter winds, 16, 17 Celsius, not feeling too unpleasant. Into the evening, many of the showers are starting to fade away by this stage, particularly for Cornwall and Devon, where we'll see some sunshine. Wales, mostly dry, a lot of cloud, but we've got these heavy showers across East Anglia and the southeast of England. Also into parts of northeast England, showers continuing through the evening. But Northern Ireland, Scotland, mostly dry, aside from some thicker cloud, giving a few light and patchy outbreaks of rain in the far northeast of Scotland. But as I said, most of the showers are easing by this stage, and as we go into the evening and overnight, clear spells will develop, particularly across western parts. I think we'll keep a fair amount of cloud across eastern and central parts of the UK, and again 1 or 2 showers into the northeast of Scotland and the North Sea coast. Otherwise a dry and clear night for western areas, and as a result temperatures dipping to 8 Celsius widely, 3 or 4 Celsius in some shelter spots. So again, a fairly chilly start to the day on Wednesday, but some bright weather about first thing. As we go through the day, plenty of fine weather continuing in the west, but shower clouds will once again develop in the east and eastern England, seeing 1 or 2 sharp downpours. 18 Celsius the afternoon high.
The latest GB News travel.
Hello again to you, I'm Jules Buckley. Let's go to Merseyside firstly. The Southworth Road, the A572, is currently closed between Parkside Road in Goulburn Dale and the A49 at Newton Le Willows. That is due to a collision now being investigated. Thorpe on the Hill in Lincolnshire, the bypass, the A46, blocked between the Highcombe roundabout and the Westby Road roundabout, very slow. There's a vehicle fire there and a spillage of diesel still being dealt with. A Brant Broughton in Lincolnshire, the A17, the Sleaford Road, that's blocked between Brant Broughton at Stragglethorpe Lane to Long Lane in Beckingham and queuing. A two-car collision there causing delays. Sturry Hill in Kent, the southbound A291 blocked away from Pope's Lane and queues. That's due to a bump. And the northbound M3, the Winnell roundabout to Junction 9. As you head up towards there, it's part blocked for about 20 minutes. There's an obstruction on the roundabout.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, GBNews.com.
Well, 1:38 is the time. Good afternoon, Britain. Now, we go back to our breaking news story. The Reform leader, Nigel Farage, has had building rubble thrown at him on the campaign trail in South Yorkshire.
Let's get the very latest with our Home and Security editor, Mark White, who joins us now. Now, Mark, you've spoken to Nigel about precisely what happened. What went on?
Well, he was on a campaign bus going through Barnsley town centre when someone in the crowd started throwing objects from a building construction site just by the side of the road. Here you can see Nigel on the top of that bus and then items being thrown. There was a coffee cup, which seems maybe innocuous enough, items taken out of that bin there. Wet cement, we believe, was thrown at him. Mr Farage believes that perhaps stones were thrown towards him as well. You can see that the police very quickly catch up with this individual and apprehend him. According to South Yorkshire Police, a 28-year-old man was arrested on suspicion of causing criminal damage on a public order offence. He has now been taken into custody. Now, Nigel Farage was interviewed very briefly just after this incident unfolded, and he expressed his frustration and also his concern about just how far people that want to make a point like this are prepared to go. This is what he said.
I tell you what I'm worried about.
Let me just make sure it's the right one.
If you think about this, a week after we commemorate D-Day, which was done so that we could live in a democracy, where we can agree to disagree, we can be very passionate, but agree to disagree. What we've now got is a mob that want to close down all debate. A mob that are prepared to use violence to achieve their goals. And that, for a democratic country, is very, very worrying indeed.
Are you okay?
Me? Yeah. I'm used to it. I don't like it. Of course not. Because this is stopping me doing what I want to do. You know, I'm at my best going out, meeting people and talking to them, having debate with them. You know, going around the pubs or whatever I do. And these violent youngsters are stopping me. It's very, very frustrating.
It didn't hit you this time?
Didn't hit me this time, but yeah, I mean, you do wonder to what length these people will go.
And that's a point, I think, that he's trying to make, is just how far will people be prepared to go in trying to make that point. He's clearly laughing it off in a sense, but he is obviously deeply frustrated because his campaigning style takes him right out face to face with the public. But he's not the only politician doing that now, because we are in this general election campaign. So all MPs are out, all politicians and candidates are out there meeting the electorate and trying to get their message across and potentially putting themselves in harm's way. It's a difficult one for the police, the security services, to know where the threats lie. And often when it's a spontaneous event like this incident in Barnsley, or a week ago in Essex where a milkshake was thrown over Mr Farage, then it's difficult to guard against that. And although you can see from the pictures there that milkshake, of course, Mr Farage's detractors no doubt sort of laughing and cackling about this, but the fact is it could happen to any politician, and it might not just be something as innocuous as a milkshake. We've seen in Europe, in Slovakia, in Germany, some really quite violent incidents where politicians have been targeted by those that disagree with them.
Mark, great to get Nigel's instant reaction there. Very interesting. It seems he has the attitude of the show will go on. But you say that he's been arrested on a public order offence. Is that right? Not some attempted assault. What else could this be?
Well, what you get is a holding arrest in the first instance. Public order is as good as any, really, just to arrest an individual and take him into custody. It might be that at a later date he might be charged with assault, but that's just the process that the police will go through. Just grabbing someone and arresting them on public order is probably the first thing that comes to mind in doing that. But the person is in custody now. They'll be interviewed. The police will be reviewing the video that we have and other people's videos and CCTV, as well as interviewing eyewitnesses to find out exactly what was thrown at Mr Farage, because clearly if it was objects that could have caused some harm, then the potential charges that this individual could be facing would potentially be more serious as well. And this is the point. Politicians just don't know. We know, of course, there's a tradition in this country of protest and vociferous protest at events, but when it starts crossing over into items and objects being thrown at individuals, or individuals being physically attacked, that's when it becomes, of course, much more worrying and a much greater potential threat to the politicians out on the campaign trail.
It's a hugely concerning incident, but I suppose one silver lining is just the response of the South Yorkshire police there, acting in a way I think sadly, too many police forces don't act when incidents like this happen. The tackle that we saw was really quite impressive, of course aided by those construction workers who helped the police out there, and bravo to them. But Mark White, thank you so much for bringing us all the very latest on this developing story and this story that's becoming part of a pattern.
Yes, it certainly is. Yes, what happened to just, debating your disagreements? Wouldn't that be nice?
It would be.
Wouldn't that be nice? You go out to campaign for something you believe in, and what do you get? Some construction debris flying your way.
What's wrong with a good old egg? When did we lose?
I don't approve of the egg either.
I'm not entirely against eggs. I think it's good old-fashioned British tradition to egg a politician.
OK, I'll give you an egging when you least expect it.
I'm not a politician.
Anyway.
Yeah, rotten fruit, eggs, that's OK. Milkshakes, construction debris, that's where I draw the line.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough, each to their own. Anyway, coming up, Sir Ed Davies on the campaign trail in Devon today. He's promoting his plans for a rural GP fund. What exactly is that? We'll bring you the latest.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
D-Day was shrouded in secrecy. Ken Hay was days away from landing in Normandy and still didn't know what was happening.
I don't think we really appreciated what we were going into. Actually, on D-Day, I was on a 30-mile route march, and we see the planes going over and that sort of thing. And we realised that wherever they were going, then we got the news that, in fact, it was Normandy, and we knew we were scheduled for that.
He arrived on Juno Beach at Coursieux-sur-Mer a few days after the main assault. The soldiers' role was to push forward into enemy territory.
I didn't land on D-Day. I landed shortly after in June. I was in the infantry, so I was a rifle and I was up the front.
While on night patrol on July 7th, his unit was attacked.
My brother was a corporal in the same platoon, and he was out with me. He got back. 16 of us out of 30 got back. 5 of us got captured, and 9 got killed.
Germans put him to work in a POW camp in Zabas, Poland. With Soviets advancing, the prisoners were forced to march for 1,000 miles.
At one point along there, my leg was chopped. I lay down in the snow. If it hadn't been for two guys who fell back in the column and picked me up, I'd have just gone to sleep and frozen to death. 2 American tanks turned up on the 22nd of April, Sunday afternoon, and we were liberated.
Ken feels pride for the role he played in Normandy and thanks God for keeping him alive.
People say, why did you volunteer for the services? It was a completely different atmosphere then. You did your bit.
The People's Channel.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians and the media, but it's actually about you. We won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear all sides
as you make your decision in the run-up to polling day.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel. Britain's election channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Well, good afternoon, Britain. It is 1:49 now, and throughout the election campaign, we're going to hear from people across the United Kingdom to find out what matters to them. So is it NHS waiting lists? Is it the impact of immigration, the cost of living, crime and policing, or all of the above?
Our reporters have been to meet voters from all 4 nations, and we're hearing from them regularly before polling day. Today, for the first time, we meet Sam Richardson from Cornwall.
I'm Sam Richardson, I'm 29 and I'm from Falmouth. So in Falmouth and Truro, the Labour Party have the best chance at getting the Tories out, so I'll be voting for the Labour Party this year. Well, I would consider myself to be centre, left of centre in my sort of politics. I feel like the last 14 years have been a bit of a disaster, to be honest. Food bank usage is up, there's a really bad housing crisis in Cornwall. Everywhere I seem to go, there seems to be shops closing down, the high streets are dying. And I just feel like most things have been really badly handled by the Conservative Party. So I think Keir Starmer's quite a serious man, which appeals to me. I think we need, especially at the moment, with the world in the state that it is, we need someone who can look at the books, make sure that the numbers add up. He's someone that I feel like, with his past as a human rights lawyer, I think that he's well suited to the role and well suited to the job at hand. I know that there's an argument that he's boring, but personally, what's wrong with boring? I yearn for the day where I don't wake up and worry about opening up my news app and seeing something ridiculous that the leader of the country has said. It doesn't have to be this soap opera all the time. I don't know that we should ever support one political party anyway. I think we should have our own political opinions and then err towards whoever best represents those. I think that's a much better way of doing it instead of pledging allegiance like a sports team. When you're 19, there's a lot of future left, right? So I would say that I've actually probably seen more politically engaged young people, whether or not that's around economic or social issues. It seems to be more prevalent now than personally what I've seen for a long time, especially with things like the climate crisis.
Well, that was Sam from Cornwall. Now, Sir Ed Davey has continued the Liberal Democrats' general election campaign with visits to Devon and Somerset today.
Yes, he's promoting the party's plan for a rural GP fund. Now, they claim that around 1.8 million people cannot reach their GP at the moment, so this is a proposal to solve that.
Let's speak to GB News political correspondent Olivia Utley, joining us live now. Olivia, you've been following the Liberal Democrats for quite some time. I'm surprised that this announcement hasn't come alongside some giant stunt.
Well, absolutely. It might be that Ed Davey's getting a bit tired of the stunts at this point after paddleboarding, cycling, the roller coaster yesterday. This is a hugely ambitious announcement from the Lib Dems. They want 8,000 more GPs across the country, and they want everyone to have the right to access a GP within 7 days or 24 hours if they urgently need one. Now, of course, that raises a big question about costing. The Liberal Democrats say it'll cost about £1 billion. How are they going to pay for it? Well, what I'm finding really interesting about the Lib Dems manifesto and their whole campaign this time round is essentially the Lib Dems seem to be pitching themselves as the left-wing alternative to the Conservatives. Keir Starmer has seized the centre ground, and it sounds as though he's going to go pretty softly on tax and spend. The Lib Dems, meanwhile, are all for increasing public spending. This GP plan is hugely expensive. Their plan for social care is hugely expensive too. And to do it, they are shamelessly saying that they will be raising capital gains tax, they'll be raising other taxes that the Conservatives have cut, they'll be pushing doubling council tax for people with second homes, they'll be taxing the super rich, all the sorts of things which you might expect to hear from someone from the kind of Jeremy Corbyn wing of the Labour Party. It'll be fascinating to see how this manifesto, how the Lib Dems go down in this election. It does look as though Ed Davey is on track to win sort of 40 or 50 seats, which would make the Lib Dems an electoral force again for the first time since about 2010. Whether it'll matter very much is another question. If the polls end up narrowing lots, we could just end up in a situation where the Lib Dems become kingmakers. But at the moment, it looks like Labour is set for a pretty substantial majority.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Livia Utley, our political correspondent there. GP is an issue that many people are very concerned about, of course.
Yes, certainly. Well, what did you make of Rishi Sunak's manifesto launch? Did you manage to stay awake through all of those announcements? Well, we'll be hearing from some of our fantastic viewers who have done what few in this country have dared to do, and that was listen to the full speech unedited. Well, we'll be getting those views from our fantastic viewers after this very short break. See you shortly.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. A lot of cloud out there today, some of that cloud giving sharp showers, particularly in the east, but the showers will tend to ease later as an area of high pressure begins to move in from the west. However, we've still got, ahead of that high, a cool northerly airflow that's particularly notable across northern and eastern parts of the UK, with limited temperatures through the afternoon and quite a lot of cloud with showers running into the east of England and northeast Scotland. Those showers will tend to become restricted to coasts overnight, and many places will end up drier with clear spells developing. The longest clear spells in the west, where temperatures in some sheltered spots could dip to 3 or 4 Celsius first thing Wednesday. However, that's where we'll see the best of the sunshine first thing. Some decent sunny spells for much of central and western Scotland. Some cloud affecting northeast Scotland as well as the central belt and southern parts, but otherwise it's mostly dry, and Northern Ireland sees some patchy cloud but dry conditions as we begin the day. A few showers into the western part of Wales and Cornwall. Otherwise, for much of England and Wales, fine weather continuing, but always a chance that we'll start the day around North Sea coast with showers, and those showers will develop more widely across the Midlands, eastern England and the southeast through the afternoon. A few sharp showers once again are possible. In between, some drier and brighter interludes, but towards the west, as well as for Scotland, Northern Ireland, a dry afternoon with sunny spells and lighter winds, so feeling more pleasant even if temperatures are still suppressed compared with the June average, coming in at 17 or 18 Celsius. Wednesday evening sees clear spells for a time, certainly across central and eventually eastern parts, but in the west the cloud thickens, and then on Thursday a band of rain crosses the country, followed on Friday and Saturday by heavy showers.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We're making this summer funner with 3 incredible prizes to be won. First, a fantastic £15,000 in tax-free cash that you can spend on anything you like. Next, there's the latest iPhone 15 with a brand new set of Apple AirPods. And finally, £500 to spend at the UK attraction of your choice. The summer fun could be on us. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, and unlike you.
That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice.
Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians and the media, but it's actually about you.
And we won't ever forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
Now more than ever, it's important to hear
all sides as you make your decision ahead of polling day.
We're here for you.
This is GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 2 o'clock on Tuesday, the 11th of June. I'm Emily Carver.
And I'm Tom Harwood.
Now, Rishi Sunak has unveiled his party manifesto, telling voters they'd be better off under a Tory government. He's promised to cut taxes, boost defence spending and clamp down on immigration. Do the promises add up? And crucially, will they keep him in number 10? Reaction analysis to come.
Meanwhile, Labour has promised 100,000 extra child's dental appointments, along with supervised teeth brushing lessons for school children.
The Lib Dems have also focused on health, promising to create greater access to GPs in rural areas.
Elsewhere, there's been another ugly scene for Reform UK's Nigel Farage, who had building rubble and stones thrown at him during a campaign event in Yorkshire. Politician safety again at risk. We'll be bringing you all the details.
It's interesting because, of course, we've had the big Conservative launch of their manifesto. Rishi Sunak there. How long was it all in all? About 45 minutes, I'd say, with all the questions?
Yeah, the speech about 15 minutes and half an hour for questions. They were detailed questions, and I think he came a bit more alive, actually, at the questions than in the speech.
But we also want to know your views. Please do keep them. We will come to them very soon, I promise. But also on some of Labour's pledges today. Some might call them a little nanny state, a little nanny statist. These are sort of public health interventions. So supervised toothbrushing at schools. We've heard that one before, but it's seemingly confirmed today. Also, what was it?
Banning energy drinks.
Yes, banning energy drinks. And, of course, the primary school children all having a free breakfast. Interested to know your thoughts.
Here's the interesting thing about the banning of the energy drinks. I think this is... It might actually be a bit classist. They're not banning coffee. They're not banning posh coffees from Starbucks or Costa Coffee.
Really?
With the same caffeine quantity. I mean, if you buy a big coffee with the sort of whipped cream and all the nonsense around it and all...
mocha.
A big mocha, I mean, whatever you get. I mean, why is that okay? Why is that okay, but we sneer at a can of Monster or Red Bull?
So a 15-year-old could buy a Frappuccino with 3 shots of coffee, but not a Monster. Other brands are available.
I think this is just class warfare.
Well, get your views in. gbnews.com/your say. Is it the nanny state in action, or is this what we need to improve our children's health? Let us know. But let's get the headlines with Sam.
Tom, Emily, thanks very much, and good afternoon to you. It's just coming up to 3 minutes past 2. The top story this afternoon, Rishi Sunak has now admitted that people are frustrated with him as he launched the Conservatives' manifesto earlier in an effort to get his general election campaign back on track. Speaking at the launch, the Prime Minister promised a multi-billion-pound package of tax cuts, including another 2p cut to national insurance. In total, those cuts would amount to an annual cost of more than £17 billion by 2030. Rishi Sunak says he's the only leader with bold ideas.
We will keep cutting taxes in the coming years, meaning that by 2027 we will have halved national insurance to 6%. That is a tax cut, my friends, worth £1,300 to the average worker.
Well, some of the other key pledges in the Conservative manifesto include help for first-time home buyers, with changes to stamp duty and what's been called a new and improved Help to Buy scheme. There was also a pledge to address a shortage of housing by building 1.6 million new homes across the country, along with £8.3 billion to fix potholes and resurface roads. There'd also be a total ban on smartphones in schools. And on immigration, there's a promise to get flights off the ground to Rwanda every month. Rishi Sunak says that deterrent is key to Britain's migration plan, clearing the asylum backlog, he says, within 6 months and ending the use of hotels.
That is why, if you vote Conservative on July the 4th, the flights removing illegal migrants will depart in July, establishing the deterrent that will stop the boats. Because when people know that if they try to come here illegally, they won't get to stay, then they will stop coming. And if we are forced to choose between our security and the jurisdiction of a foreign court, including the ECHR, we will always choose our nation's security.
And returning to the matter of tax cuts, Sir Keir Starmer has called the Conservatives' plan a Jeremy Corbyn-style manifesto and said that he wouldn't match the national insurance cut.
Money's not there for the Tories' desperation, and what they're producing is a recipe for 5 more years of chaos. And I think that's why it's so important that we see this election as a choice, because we can't go on like this. We need to turn the page, rebuild, start with Labour. We've got 6 first steps that are ready to go on July the 5th, get on with the job, roll our sleeves up. So that's the choice before the country now.
Jamie Oliver has said that a ban on the sale of energy drinks to young people would be a welcome relief for parents and teachers. The TV chef says that he supports Labour's plan, which would see children under the age of 16 blocked from purchasing drinks with more than 150 milligrams of caffeine per litre. That's after studies have shown that high levels of caffeine among young people can cause sleep disturbances as well as behavioural and mental health problems. Police have arrested a 28-year-old man on suspicion of public order offences after objects were thrown at Nigel Farage during a campaign event late this morning. It's understood a coffee cup and possibly some building rubble narrowly missed the Reform UK leader, who was on top of the party's battle bus in Barnsley town centre. Mr Farage was addressing supporters when he was interrupted by a crowd of demonstrators. He said that he had been warned by police not to get off the bus for his safety. Gary Glitter has been ordered to pay more than £500,000 in damages to one of the women he abused. The woman, who can't be named, is suing the disgraced pop star, whose real name is Paul Gadd, following his conviction in 2015 for abusing her and 2 other young people between 1975 and 1980. He was briefly released in February last year before being sent back to prison after reportedly attempting to access images of children on the dark web. International news now, and the Hamas terror group has now accepted a ceasefire proposal that was passed by the United Nations last night. The UN Security Council backed the 3-phase plan, which includes the release of hostages and the withdrawal of Israeli forces. A senior member of Hamas says the group will accept the deal and that it's now ready to begin negotiations over the details. And finally, they say that elephants never forget, but now researchers have found that they've got a particular skill for remembering names as well. New studies suggest the giant animals use individual rumbles to get each other's attention, similar to the way that humans use names. Evidence shows them recognising and reacting to certain calls addressed to them and even ignoring other calls addressed to others. Experts used a specialist signal processing technique to identify the subtle differences in each call. That's the latest from the newsroom for now. Another update in the next half hour. In the meantime, you can sign up to GB News Alerts. Just scan the code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Well, the big political news today. The Prime Minister has set out his party manifesto. He's telling voters they'll be better off under a Conservative government.
He's made a number of pledges, which include tax cuts, a clampdown on immigration as well. But do his promises add up? And can they persuade voters to back him and remain at number 10?
Well, let's speak with GB News political editor Christopher Hope, who has been at the launch. Christopher, I guess the big thing is tax cuts.
Yes, hi Tom, hi Emily. That's right, £17 billion worth of tax cuts the Tories are trumpeting. The big headline figure, the big and new idea is abolishing national insurance for self-employed by the end of this Parliament. There's also 2% off national insurance for the millions of us who are employed by other companies. That's by 2027. They're paying this through welfare cuts, to saving as much as £12 billion a year in the welfare system. There's a document here produced called a costings document, which we've been going through with experts behind the scenes from the Tory party. The party here, though, is selling itself as bold choices, and it does need bold choices to try and to chip away at this 20% plus lead for the Labour Party in the polls. And earlier, when the PM Rishi Sunak announced this manifesto, I asked him why his party wasn't being bolder about the ECHR, the European Court of Human Rights, and here's what he had to say.
Thanks, Chris. I've been clear throughout that I believe that our plan is compliant with all our international obligations. But I've also been clear, and the manifesto is crystal clear, that if we are forced to choose between the jurisdiction of a foreign court, including the ECHR, and our country's national security, then I'm going to choose our country's national security every single time.
That was Mr Sunak talking to us earlier in a question we asked him at the press conference, and afterwards we got hold of James Cleverly, the Home Secretary, to ask him why he can't be bolder and just say we're pulling out of the ECHR rather than this idea of not being bullied by a foreign court. How many flights will take off? How many people might take off by August if you win on July the 4th?
Well, the PM has made it clear that if we return a Conservative government, and only if we return a Conservative government, we have a regular drumbeat, multiple flights per month until the vote.
How many people? How many people?
Well, there's no upper limit to the RADA scheme, and we have made it very clear that the only thing that will stop those flights is a Labour government.
Thank you. They have no upper limit, and there's 100,000 people waiting to be taken out of this country, maybe go to a third country or to Rwanda, and they're making very clear to us in briefings that these numbers will carry on, the drumbeat will take off, they need to scale up the flights, the planes are ready, the aircraft are ready, the airports are ready. All the party needs to do is to win the election on July the 4th.
Chris, it's hugely meant to be a big moment in this campaign. It's meant to be perhaps what could be a turning point in this campaign. It was certainly seen that way in 2017 when the Labour Party manifesto was leaked. People suddenly started reassessing where these parties stood. It kicked off something really quite seismic in how polls shifted. Do you get a sense that anything like that might happen after today?
Well, it's hard to judge, isn't it, from Silverstone, and we're looking, of course, at the feedback from GB News viewers at our Your Say section of our website. But normally, yeah, these kind of documents, these are moments in the campaign which are meant to set alight the party's poll, to almost put petrol into the tank, given we're at Silverstone, of the party's poll rating. The problem, I think, is that a lot of what's in this document has been known before, has been briefed before in the first 3 weeks of the campaign. Almost the party's been just trying to get the engine going and turn the engine on and find a policy which will get the party moving in the polls. I think national insurance, for compulsory national insurance for those in their late teens, certainly started a debate around kitchen tables in voters and GBNews viewers and elsewhere. But whether that's enough, I think, to fire up the engine of the poll rating, we wait to see. I think Thursday is a big day for Labour's announcements, and they'll be challenged quite a lot about costings. Will they cut, for example, the welfare budget, like the Tories are saying they will do today? And if not, where will you find the money required for your spending programme? Will you borrow more or increase taxes in ways they haven't described yet? I don't see it as a moment to cut through, but of course we'll wait and see about the polls at the weekend after this big week has gone past for the manifestos.
Yes, there may well be quite a few self-employed who might rethink, considering a big tax cut could be coming their way. Thank you very much indeed, Christopher Hope, GB News political editor, who's been at the launch for us. Some of you have got in touch about the manifesto already. Someone here, Lady, I think just Lady is your name. Never thought I'd be saying this, but the manifesto launch was much better than I'd expected. Worst part was the answer about SEND in schools, that special needs at the end. Not enough effort made in that response, but all in all, better than expected. Others of you not so impressed.
Well, we want to understand, of course, precisely what people really think of these pledges and whether it will be impactful for the electorate.
Yes, we're joined now by some of our GB voices. David Baum, a PT from Watford, and Adrian Gell, a former caterer from Shropshire. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Shall we start with you, David? What did you make of that manifesto launch? Was there something in there for you?
Well, as you said before, it's been known, most of this has been leaked over the last couple of weeks anyway. The tax for self-employed, obviously, I'm going to applaud that one. It's great. But I think there's much more in there which people want to hear about. The fact is, Rwanda flights will go ahead, and if we have to, we'll leave the ECHR. We have women being biologically recognised as women in sport and in life. And there's nothing about anti-trans. This is about a biological fact. And some women are scared of what's going to happen with them. We have the Dad's Army, for want of better, national service. I think most older people are going to applaud that because, in fact, my mother-in-law, who's 87, said it should be 2 years, not a year. If we need to bring back some pride, and what we have to stop is allowing the negativity of life, where a small minority will shout over everybody else, it's not fair, and make the majority feel unsafe or uncared for.
OK, Adrian, what did you make of the big announcements today?
Well, I thought it was quite interesting. And, sorry, I think to start off with, you've got to remember that 5 years ago, the manifesto was written by Boris Johnson, which was eventually taken over by Rishi Sunak over the last 2 years. But the last 2 years, it hasn't been his manifesto. Today, we've been given the opportunity to listen to his manifesto. And as David said, you know, a lot of this has been effectively leaked already. I'm not that surprised by much of it. I'm slightly disappointed that there is nothing in there about the reduction of inheritance tax or getting rid of inheritance tax altogether. I'm disappointed about that. But actually, yeah, there are things like his promise to get these flights off to Rwanda. Well, we've heard that been going on actually for the last 2 years anyway. But I don't know quite what the difference is going to be between pre-election and post-election.
Well, Adrian, what did you make of his... Adrian, sorry to butt in, but I'm interested to know what you made of his answer to the question on the European Court of Human Rights. He didn't say that they would pull out of it, but he said that he'd always put the Rwanda flights first. Were you convinced by that answer?
You're absolutely right, and it does worry me slightly. I mean, I remember looking back. David Cameron years ago said that actually he would rather have our own British Bill of Human Rights. So, and I don't understand. What I would have quite liked to have heard actually almost was Sunak saying we will get out of the ECHR, but we will introduce our own Bill of Rights, which would have been a conservative Bill of Rights that could have dealt with many problems that we face at the moment. Does he have the balls to stand up to the ECHR? I'm not too sure that he does, because if he did have, why hasn't he done it already? And as you say, not saying it as a policy that we will pull out of the ECHR. What he's saying is that he will stand up to the ECHR and make sure that our borders are secured by our own laws. I find that a little bit wishy-washy.
Of course, we did have our own Bill of Rights originally, 1689. It was a marvellous document. I don't know why we chucked it. But let's return to you, David, because I suppose in a tighter election, where the polls are neck and neck, potentially a moment like this, a manifesto launch, matters more. Do you think many people will be paying attention, given just the gulf in the polls? It's not likely much of this will be implemented.
I think what a lot of people are going to be waiting for is Thursday, where Labour actually have to say what they will do. Because at the moment, all we've had is bluster and hot air about what everybody else is doing. We've seen the Liberal Democrats manifesto, which basically seems to go play at the funfair with Ed Davey, if you really want to have that sort of partner. So it's going to be interesting to see how Labour are going to counteract the Conservative manifesto. For the first time, probably since Tony Blair's time, we have the Labour and the Conservatives as two ideologically different parties. And we will then have a choice to make on which ideology we wish to follow.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time out of your day to speak to us. Really appreciate getting your response to that manifesto launch. David Baum, you are a PT from Watford, and Adrian Gell, a former caterer from Shropshire. Really good stuff. Thank you. Very interesting to hear the instant reaction. Some things stick out, don't they?
They certainly do. Well, up next, we'll be discussing the attack on Reform leader Nigel Farage after someone threw rubble, stones and building material at him whilst out on the campaign trail in South Yorkshire earlier today.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Joint CEO at the UK Sepsis Trust, Dr. Ron Daniels. Very good to see you this morning. Why is it with sepsis we sort of hear very little about it in day-to-day life until there's either a big story or a big tragedy? Why is that? Is it common?
Well, it's astonishing, isn't it? We have a condition here that affects nearly 250,000 people across the UK each year and claims 48,000 lives. And just for context, breast cancer, and I'm not diminishing how horrible that can be, claims 11,000 lives. So sepsis is 4 times more prolific as a killer. I think the reason we don't hear about it is because it doesn't really belong to any particular speciality of doctors. It touches every aspect of healthcare, and therefore there's no professional group to be championing it, which means it needs an advocacy organisation like ours.
My understanding is that it's when your own immune system starts to attack the tissues, but by the time people realise that their temperature isn't just flu or something, they can often be in quite a perilous state.
It arises in people of any age, people with whether or not they've got underlying illness, and it can arise as a consequence of any infection. So it presents hugely differently.
So what do we do?
If you're concerned something is devastatingly wrong, there are 6 key symptoms to look for, and they spell the word sepsis. S for slurred speech or confusion. E for extreme pain in the muscles or joints. P for passing no urine, no water in a day. S for severe breathlessness, I for it feels like I'm going to die, and people really do say that. And then the final S for skin that's mottled or discoloured or very pale. Any one of those 6 in the context of infection, it's go straight to A&E.
The People's Channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 23 minutes past 2. Now, the Reform Party leader Nigel Farage has had building rubble thrown at him on the campaign trail in South Yorkshire.
Well, let's get the very latest with our Home and Security editor, Mark White, who joins us now. Mark, tell us.
Well, Nigel Farage was on an open-top bus. He was campaigning in Barnsley town centre when a number of objects were thrown towards him. Now, one object, and we can see the video here now, one of the objects is clearly a cup, but it's also reported that some wet concrete and Nigel Farage, I spoke to him a little earlier, he thought that there was at least one or more stones thrown at him as well, but that's not been confirmed by the police. You can see the man quickly pursued by the police and then tackled by that officer. They say it's a 28-year-old suspect who has now been arrested initially on suspicion of a public order offence. He is in police custody and will be questioned as the police obviously look at the CCTV, look at videos like this one that we're watching at the moment and interview eyewitnesses to find exactly what it was that was thrown towards Nigel Farage. Now, Mr Farage was just moments later interviewed on the bottom deck of that bus, and this is what he told reporters.
I tell you what I'm worried about.
Let me just make sure it's the right one.
If you think about this, a week after we commemorate D-Day, which was done so that we could live in a democracy, where we can agree to disagree, we can be very passionate, but agree to disagree. What we've now got is a mob that want to close down all debate. A mob that are prepared to use violence to achieve their goals. And that, for a democratic country, is very, very worrying indeed.
Be okay?
Me? Yeah. I'm used to it. I don't like it. Of course not. Because this is stopping me doing what I want to do. You know, I'm at my best going out, meeting people and talking to them, having debate with them. You know, going around the pubs or whatever I do. And these violent youngsters are stopping me. It's very, very frustrating.
It didn't hit you this time?
Didn't hit me this time, but yeah, I mean, you do wonder to what length these people will go.
And I think that's the point there, Nigel Farage, saying you wonder to what lengths these people might go. He was laughing it off, but he's clearly frustrated because it may be, you know, cups this time or wet concrete or whatever the objects from this construction site were. But the next time it could be something much more dangerous that could really harm Mr Farage or another politician that objects are thrown at. This is a time during a general election campaign when politicians and candidates to be MPs are at their most vulnerable because they're out in constituencies across the country coming face to face with the electorate, and most people are grown up. They realise that you can agree to disagree, but there are those that will just go that step further.
Well, Mark White, thank you very much for bringing us that. It's certainly a concerning development and appears to be part of a pattern.
Very, and on the same day that Animal Rising, the activist group, decided to take it upon themselves to, well, graffiti, vandalise, more like, the portrait of the King, the latest one, the red one in the Philip Mould Gallery in London.
I have to say, they slapped on a sort of a picture of Wallace the Gromit and a bit of a speech bubble over it as well. To me, that doesn't tug on my heartstrings in the same way that throwing something over, just sort of doing something wantonly vandalising.
Imagine if you're a parent, right, and your child starts off by flicking bits of sweet corn across the room.
Yeah, right? It's messy.
Right? And you just indulge that. You let it go. You say, oh, he's just being a child. He's just being a child. Next day, he starts throwing his pasta across the room. Next day, starts kicking you in the shins. Next day, starts, you know, vandalising something out in the town centre. These things, you know, if you let them go at the lower level, it just gets worse and worse and worse. I'm convinced of that.
Yes, I completely agree with you. But
Same with crime and punishment in general.
But I don't think this instance is something that is equivalent to those things that are violent, that are frankly wantonly messy, for want of another word.
I don't know. It shows a disrespect of any sense of authority. Angers me anyway.
Well, have you checked the time? It's nearly 2:30. 2:30, because the Labour Party is pledging to add an extra 100,000 dental appointments for young people in an effort to clear backlogs across England.
Yes, it would see extra slots open up during evenings and weekends, paid for by clamping down on tax rules.
Let's speak to Mark Jones now, the founder of Toothless in England. Mark, what do you make of these proposals?
Good afternoon. Lovely to be with you again. Proposals are great, aren't they? It's what is delivered in the end that matters, and will matter to tens, hundreds of thousands of families across the country who finding it impossible to get their children, let alone themselves, in to see a dentist.
And Mark, what do you make of this other proposal to have supervised teeth brushing at schools for 3 to 5-year-olds? Is that the nanny state gone mad, or is this something that we actually need?
Well, I think at the moment you have to take into account where this country is as far as the state of its overall oral health. It's in a catastrophic state. We're in the middle of a dental crisis with dental deserts up and down the country. And what we've lost, and we've lost it for quite some time now, is the education part, the critical part of early years education, to try and teach our children and to get them into good habits, undertaking good habits like brushing their teeth regularly, reducing the amount of sugar they take in. So, yes, supervised brushing of teeth in schools, we think it, and we've said this for quite some time, we think it's a good idea, but it has to be. It simply must be delivered by oral health care professionals. We can't rely on already overstretched teachers to undertake this important work. And I think we all recognise that it is important work, that we teach our children well.
No, I can totally understand that point of view. After all, it seems that teachers are becoming more and more sort of social workers for children in far too many parts of the country. But Mark, obviously your proposal there would cost a lot more money than what the Labour Party are proposing with just sort of daily toothbrushing lessons. I mean, if you're going to bring in external professionals, you're going to have to pay them.
Well, I think there's an overall... Well, of course, you have to pay for everything these days. But again, we've said for a very long time, you know, the priorities in Westminster need to be focused on putting patient need first. For far too long now, since 2006, oral health care provision in this country has been target-led rather than patient-led. And it's patient needs that must come first. And children's health, if we get the children adopting good habits with regular brushing of teeth, their long-term health into their 60s like me at this age and beyond is going to be far better than not. If you don't have that early education, good habits, regular brushing of teeth, then your oral health and overall general health and well-being will be not as good as it should be.
Yes, I guess the argument is that investment in the early days may, save money in the longer run. I guess that's the hope. I wonder if there's we should just have a massive PR campaign. If parents really aren't, brushing their children's teeth and getting them and supervising them in the morning and the evening, then maybe a big campaign drive. Maybe. Thank you very much, Mark. Mark Jones, founder of Toothless in England. We don't want kids with falling out teeth, do we? Well, I mean, apart from the milk teeth, that's okay.
Well, this is the other thing. The Labour Party keeps on saying that the most common reason a child goes to hospital now is for their teeth. And it's like, good. Good. That means, why else do you want a child to go to hospital? This doesn't necessarily indicate a rise in problems with teeth, but it does indicate a fall in diseases of other kinds.
Yes, that may be true, but there may also be a rise in dodgy teeth. But anyway, coming up, we're speaking to our royal correspondent as Animal Rising vandalise a portrait of King Charles. That's after your headlines with Sam.
Just after 2:30, the top stories from the newsroom this afternoon. Rishi Sunak has promised a multi-billion-pound package of tax cuts in an effort to get his general election campaign back on track. It includes another 2p cut to national insurance and to eventually scrap it altogether for the self-employed. In total, the package of cuts would amount to an annual cost of more than £17 billion by 2030. Sir Keir Starmer, though, has called it a Jeremy Corbyn-style manifesto, which he says is unaffordable. Speaking at the Conservatives' launch event earlier, the Prime Minister said he is the only leader with big ideas promising to cut taxes.
We will keep cutting taxes in the coming years, meaning that by 2027 we will have halved national insurance to 6%. That is a tax cut, my friends, worth £1,300 to the average worker.
But the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, says the Conservatives' plan doesn't make economic sense and that he wouldn't match the national insurance cut.
Money's not there for the Tories' desperation. And what they're producing is a recipe for 5 more years of chaos. And I think that's why it's so important that we see this election as a choice, because we can't go on like this. We need to turn the page, rebuild, start with Labour. We've got 6 first steps that are ready to go on July the 5th, get on with the job, roll our sleeves up. So that's the choice before the country now.
Sir Keir Starmer there. Well, let's take a look at some of the other key pledges from the Conservative manifesto. That includes help for first-time home buyers, with changes to stamp duty and what's been called a new and improved Help to Buy scheme. There was also a pledge to address the shortage of housing by building 1.6 million new homes, along with £8.3 billion to fix potholes and resurface roads. There'd also be a total ban on smartphones in schools, and on immigration, there's a promise to get flights off the ground to Rwanda every month. And a protest group has vandalised a portrait of the King. 2 members of Animal Rising entered the Philip Mould Gallery and stuck images from the animated series Wallace and Gromit to the painting. The group says it was calling attention to what it says is poor treatment of animals on farms. It says they targeted His Majesty due to his position as a royal patron of the RSPCA. For the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts. Just scan the code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hi there, time for a look at the weather with the Met Office for GB News. Some bright spells today, but a lot of cloud is developing, and that cloud will give scattered showers in places, particularly towards the east. In the east, we've got low pressure. Towards the west, we've got high pressure. That's going to kill off many of the showers through the rest of the day, but always the chance that just about anywhere could see a shower or two, but the most frequent showers will be across eastern and central parts of England. And we'll also see this continued northerly breeze. That's going to make it feel on the cool side, particularly for the North Sea coast, just 12 degrees there for Sunderland. Towards the southwest, where we've got some sunshine coming through and lighter winds, 16, 17 Celsius, not feeling too unpleasant. Into the evening, many of the showers are starting to fade away by this stage, particularly for Cornwall and Devon, where we'll see some sunshine. Wales, mostly dry, a lot of cloud, but we've got these heavy showers across East Anglia and the southeast of England, also into parts of northeast England, showers continuing through the evening. But Northern Ireland, Scotland, mostly dry, aside from some thicker cloud, giving a few light and patchy outbreaks of rain in the far northeast of Scotland. But as I said, most of the showers are easing by this stage, and as we go into the evening and overnight, clear spells will develop, particularly across western parts. I think we'll keep a fair amount of cloud across eastern and central parts of the UK, and again, 1 or 2 showers into the northeast of Scotland and the North Sea coast. Otherwise, a dry and clear night for western areas, and as a result, temperatures dipping to 8 Celsius widely, 3 or 4 Celsius in some shelter spots. So again, a fairly chilly start to the day on Wednesday, but some bright weather about first thing. As we go through the day, plenty of fine weather continuing in the west, but shower clouds will once again develop in the east and eastern England, seeing 1 or 2 sharp downpours. 18 Celsius the afternoon high.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon. Hello, I'm Jules Buckley. Let's go to Greater Manchester. Firstly, the northbound M66 struggling. It's partially blocked from Bury Junction 2 up to 1 for Ramsbottom and queuing, and obstruction there's causing delays. The A46, the Lincoln bypass, shut between the Highcombe roundabout and the Wisby Road roundabout. There's queues of vehicle fire there, spillage of diesel causing big delays on all surrounding routes as well. Clockwise M25 away from Darenth towards Swanley. Junction 2 to 3 seeing some intermittent queues following an earlier breakdown. All the lanes are back open. And a couple of issues in Cornwall this lunchtime. The A30 between the Haymore roundabout and Penzance shut, an obstruction there. And the Pennick Road, the westbound A390 in St Austell, is shut by the service station to Alexander Avenue and queuing. That's due to a 2-vehicle collision. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Well, it's 2:39. Good afternoon, Britain. Now, up next at 3 is Martin Daubney. He joins us now. Martin, a big day. What have you got coming up on the show?
Yeah, we'll be casting an eye over that £17 billion Rishi Sunak manifesto giveaway. Extraordinary that Sir Keir Starmer has called it a Corbyn-style giveaway. He should know he backs 2 of them, one in 2017 and one in 2019. The spectre of Corbyn haunts this election again. Who'd have thought it's the Labour Party using it against the Tories? And it was things that only get better in 1997. Now fangs can only get better. Why the Labour Party meddling with our children's choppers? It's not their job to take care of our kids, is it? Leave them alone. And also political violence. Now in 2019, I was sent to the press round the day after Nigel Farage was milkshaked in Newcastle. It's getting worse. Milkshake last week, this week, today, rocks. We talk about the far right being the problem. Let's face facts. The problem is the radicalised left. The Be Kind Brigade, they're the ones with the real problem. What do we do about them? And at 3:30 today, the European Championship training session with England kicks off. We'll be live there from Germany. Looking ahead to Sunday night's 8 o'clock kickoff with Serbia. 500 hardcore hooligans are being shipped in. Will they all kick off on Sunday night? That's all coming on the show, 3 till 6.
Oh, marvellous. A lot of stuff there. Looking forward to it, particularly seeing what's going on in Germany. Hopefully the England team can sort of pick up from how we started this tournament. I mean, my goodness.
Bit concerning, all of these hooligans being bussed in by the sounds of things.
Are they really hooligans?
Things could kick off. It got pretty dangerous back in 2016, didn't it? You remember it well?
I mean, was it that bad?
Oh, I think there was fisticuffs.
There's a bit of fisticuffs.
Well, you know, we'll see. We'll see. Hopefully people will be well behaved.
I'm sure they will be.
Yes. In other news, the King's portrait has been vandalised by animal rights protesters.
These activists. I was about to say these animals.
Well, they claim like
perhaps
it.
some people might think that they are, but these activists from Animal Rising plastered the face of the cartoon character Wallace from Wallace and Gromit in a demonstration attacking the RSPCA. Nothing says we like animal rights more than attacking the RSPCA.
Well, joining us now is our royal correspondent, Cameron Walker. Cameron, this portrait was quite controversial when it came out, and now this.
Yeah, it's the first official portrait of King Charles III since the coronation, as you said, unveiled a couple of weeks ago at Buckingham Palace by the King. It now hangs in the Philip Mould gallery in London, and this afternoon around midday 2 Animal Rising supporters entered the gallery and plastered those 2 images onto the portrait. Now, King Charles is a big fan, as we understand it, of Wallace and Gromit. Animal Rising spokesperson says it's meant to be a light-hearted protest over a very serious issue because they're demonstrating about the fact that they've kind of done this investigation and they found that 45 RSPCA assured farms, they allege even that there's breaches of government rules when it comes to animal cruelty. Now, the RSPCA has been contacted for comment on this. Of course, by attacking the King Charles portrait, it has created this oxygen of publicity, hasn't it? And now everybody is talking about the fact that they're all talking about this report and Animal Rising protesting against this portrait. Now, it's the Royal Society of the Protection of Cruelty to Animals. King Charles is the royal patron of the society, but as you can probably expect, Buckingham Palace are not commenting on this issue. I suspect it's because they don't want to give Animal Rising any more publicity than they've already got by pulling this stunt. But if those of you are worried about the portrait, I do understand it's covered in Perspex glass. You can kind of see the reflection there on this video we're playing now on television. So the portrait itself not damaged.
There we go. So not damaged of the portrait. I suppose we can only assume that they knew that that was going to be the case. What do you think the King might make of all of this?
Well, Animal Rising hope the King's going to find it very, very amusing indeed. I'm not sure if he will or not. We do know he has a keen interest in animal rights and the environment as well, and he has, of course, been associated with the RSPCA for some time and patron since he became king back in September 2022. The caption reads that they pasted onto his portrait, "No cheese, Gromit. Look at all this cruelty on RSPCA farms." So they're clearly trying to draw attention to the issue. Whether there's any truth in these allegations, we don't have RSPCA's response, but we have certainly contacted them. I suspect King Charles isn't going to give it much notice. I suspect he's got more important issues to deal with, like trooping the colour at the weekend and the Garter ceremony next Monday.
Well, quite. Thank you very much indeed, Cameron Walker, our royal correspondent, for bringing us the latest. You know, I don't care if there's any truth to the allegations. That's not the point. You can't just storm into an art gallery and take it upon yourself to vandalise in that way. Doesn't matter if it's harmed the picture underneath or not. It's just an outrageous sense of entitlement. Ridiculous. How many far-left activist groups do we have in this country now? It's like there's a million splinter groups.
Do you know what? I think they're all the same people.
It does seem to be, doesn't it?
They just swap their hats. It's the people who are in the Palestine thing. They're all in Extinction Rebellion. They're all in Just Stop Oil. They're all in Animal Rising. It's exactly the same people. They just swap their hats.
Isn't there another animal revolt?
Rebellion?
Animal Rebellion. Yes, a splinter of Extinction.
Yeah, that's the same
Rebellion.
people, but on Wednesdays, not Tuesdays.
Right, OK. So they sort of have, you know, weekends is the Animal Rise. Oh, no, well,
yeah, well, sometimes they try and do these joint protests, and sort of you had the stopping oil people doing a Palestine protest, and do you know what? It wasn't any larger than a size of a normal Just Stop Oil protest because it's exactly the same people. These are professional protesters. It's all that they do.
And then you've got pro-Palestinian protesters taking it upon themselves to vandalise 20, I think it is now, Barclays branches across the country, spraying them with red paint. A lot of them have had their windows completely smashed in. Terrifying for local residents.
See, that is materially different.
Well, I don't know if it's all part of the same thing, isn't it? People thinking that their cause is so important and that everyone else, if they're not as concerned by it as they are, you know, has to put up with this type of thing.
No, we can see here from some shops in Bristol that have had the most egregious level of violence levelled against them. Smashed glass, red paint, all in this Palestinian protest. The front of Barclays there, completely destroyed.
Yeah, and with everything else going on, this hasn't had half as much enough press attention. I mean, it's really quite incredible. This has happened at a number of branches across the country. It's a concerted attempt to intimidate, I think. Certainly it is. That's highly intimidating.
Absolutely, and raises this general sense of lawlessness. Let's hope the people behind it can be locked away for a very, very long time indeed.
Well, let's hope so. But coming up, the Euros start this Friday, but England fans have been warned by German police that over 500 Serbian hooligans could target them at the competition. Stay tuned.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Today we've got two fantastic individuals who have invented a teddy bear to help children who are suffering with mental health.
Yes, so Lynn and Samantha Crilly came up with the idea for the Trouble Muncher toy following Samantha's own battle with an eating disorder and OCD.
Yes, the teddy comes with a notepad and encourages its owners to write down what's troubling them, and then they can pop the note into the rucksack on the bear's back.
I struggled with mental health most of my life, actually, and oh no, it's fine. I've got one. I feel quite sorry for you. But and one thing I always did was message my mum, and it was a thought disassociation kind of technique. I would message you. Even now, I message you thoughts that come into my mind, but massively when I was younger. And I thought, what happens if you're younger and you don't have this?
Yeah, and I think in today's technology-fueled world, I think we go back to basics, and it just helps them to process by writing it down. Everything's so instant these days.
So it's like an indirect way of telling your parents how you're feeling, what you're going through. Such a great idea. What's the feedback been from parents who have got a Trouble Muncher for their kids? What you've got any stories?
It's been really good. In one household, he sits on the kitchen side, and I think during the day, the parents, the children put their worries in, or at night, and then they know that their parents will look at it during the day. And it's gone into some schools as well.
You'd imagine you'd want one of these Trouble Munchers in every classroom and in every school up and down the country, because children who are being bullied, for example, who feel like they can't tell their parents, they're too embarrassed to talk about it. This is such an important tool, isn't it, for children to communicate that?
Yeah, well, you were saying Mum's a mental health counsellor, and you had a young child who had Snapchat AI. So you talk to an AI in Snapchat, and that's what they talk to now.
The People's Channel.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians in the media, but actually, it's about you.
And we won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear
all sides
as you make your decision ahead of polling day.
We're here for you.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's election channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, unlike you.
That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
OK, it's 2:50. Good afternoon, Britain. And the German police are said to be gearing up for 500 Serbian hooligans who could target England fans for when teams face off on Sunday in England's first game of the tournament in the German city of Gelsenkirchen.
Very well done on that pronunciation. I wouldn't have had a clue. Officers in Germany are getting ready for the prospect of major fan disorder at what has been branded the most high-risk match of Euro 2024.
Well, this is sparking fears following England's previous Euros campaigns, which have been marred by riots, most recently before their 2016 opener against Russia, as well as the final of the last tournament 3 years ago. Yes, it did get rather... there was quite a bit of violence, wasn't there?
Yeah, a bit of fisticuffs. We can get now. We can speak to the football writer Harry Harris, because Harry, how concerned should we be about tensions ahead of this game?
Oh, very concerned. I've been around the world following England, and most of the tournaments we've been talking about the hooligans more than anybody else. That's a problem that we've experienced all the time. So, unfortunately, yeah, I think we need to be very concerned. There will be a massive police presence, but what I experience mostly is that because the hooligans now know that the security is so tight in and around the stadium that they congregate at railway stations, city centres, bars. And of course, you know, England fans don't do themselves any favours. As we can see, they become a target with their behaviour, you know, mostly bare-chested, excessive drinking, larking around, throwing chairs around, etc., being, you know, all the bravado we've seen in the past. And of course, we used to lead the way in hooliganism, but we don't anymore. The rival fans are much better organised, and certainly in volumes and numbers. And I think the media have a very interesting role to play here. The more we're talking about it, particularly in the newspapers, the more we're inflaming a situation and inevitably going to cause these riots to happen, because the hooligans are going to see it as a challenge. So even genuine fans who are going out there with tickets wanting to see the football, it will attract hooligans who have no interest in the football and have no tickets. They would just be going out there for the violence.
So do you feel uncomfortable talking about it? Talking about it in the media? I mean, I was going to ask you to remind us how bad this sort of thing can get.
Well, we've seen it with the portrayal of black players in the bad performance in the last match, that they became the focal point, and that became an issue should the media be targeting those particular players. And I think we have to take it to this point as well. How much should the media be, highlighting this kind of violence that's going to take place? You know, it's you know, fair enough reporting it if it takes place and condemning it and finding solutions to it. But previewing it in such a heavy-handed way is going to inflame it, because it's a challenge to a lot of hooligans to go out there ticketless but seeking violence.
What is it about football that attracts quite often a level of violence?
Well, because it's so territorial, it's so, you know, international. We're talking about international football in particular, where political aspects become ingrained into the sport where it shouldn't be. And, you know, there's so much chanting that we find with the English fans that is so inflammatory and political, and they don't even know what they're singing about. So it is a recipe for disaster. And
yes, well, Harry, thank you very much indeed for joining us and talking to us about that. Harry Harris, you're a football writer. Really great to get your view. That's it from us today.
It's gone very, very quickly.
Has indeed. We're back tomorrow at 12.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. A lot of cloud out there today. Some of that cloud giving sharp showers, particularly in the east. But the showers will tend to ease later as an area of high pressure begins to move in from the west. However, we've still got, ahead of that high, a cool northerly airflow that's particularly notable across northern and eastern parts of the UK, with limited temperatures through the afternoon and quite a lot of cloud, with showers running into the east of England and northeast Scotland. Those showers will tend to become restricted to coasts overnight, and many places will end up drier, with clear spells developing. The longest clear spells in the west, where temperatures in some sheltered spots could dip to 3 or 4 Celsius first thing Wednesday. However, that's where we'll see the best of the sunshine first thing. Some decent sunny spells for much of central and western Scotland. Some cloud affecting northeast Scotland as well as the central belt and southern parts, but otherwise it's mostly dry, and Northern Ireland sees some patchy cloud but dry conditions as we begin the day. A few showers into the western part of Wales and Cornwall. Otherwise, for much of England and Wales, fine weather continuing, but always a chance that we'll start the day around North Sea coast with showers, and those showers will develop more widely across the Midlands, eastern England and the southeast through the afternoon. A few sharp showers once again are possible. In between, some drier and brighter interludes, but towards the west, as well as for Scotland, Northern Ireland, a dry afternoon with sunny spells and lighter winds, so feeling more pleasant even if temperatures are still suppressed compared with the June average, coming in at 17 or 18 Celsius. Wednesday evening sees clear spells for a time, certainly across central and eventually eastern parts, but in the west the cloud thickens, and then on Thursday a band of rain crosses the country, followed on Friday and Saturday by heavy showers.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's our summer spectacular. 3 top prizes that have to be won. There's cash. £15,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like this summer. Plus a brand new iPhone 15 with a set of Apple AirPods. And if that wasn't enough, we'll also treat you to some fun in the sun with £500 to spend at your favourite UK attraction this summer. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
she could have said storm.
You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel.